Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the webinar on forensic psychology, present scenario in India, brought to you by the Indian Association of Clinical Psychologists, powered by Pearson. My name is Bharat Iyer, and I will be your host for this webinar. I'm happy to see a lot of people from different parts of this country who have joined us today. We have had an overwhelming response from all of you. Nearly 2,000 people have registered for this webinar. Unfortunately, not all of the registrants could attend, but we will surely be sharing the recording soon after. I invite Dr. Kalpana Srivatsa, President of the Indian Association of Clinical Psychologists, to say a few words and to introduce Dr. Vaya as well. Kalpana, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. Actually, it is really a distinct honor to introduce Dr. S.L. Vaya to this platform. In fact, I'm really grateful that ma'am has agreed to give a talk over this platform for the benefit of all of us. She has told me not to eat up to her time and to be precise about her biodata, which is so difficult for me. So I'll try to be as precise as possible. Dr. S.L. Vaya is well known in the country and the international platform as well. She is a retired additional director, former dean and director of Institute of Behavioral Sciences. She is former professor and director of Raksha Shakti University, former non-officiating member of the State Mental Health Authority and licensing subcommittee in the State Mental Health Authority. She started MPhil program as well in the Forensics University, Gujarat. She has been awardee of many prestigious national awards, but I'm allowed to say only few here, so I'll just mention few. Like one of them to mention is the Union Minister's Award, in that one for the non-physical sciences, that means life sciences award, and the Lifetime Achievement Award given by the Union Minister very recently in 2018. Am I right, ma'am? And among so many accolades which she has, I would like to mention few that she has many first to her credit. First NABL accredited forensic psychologist in the country. She started first forensic psychology lab in the country, and she has used such fine procedures that she's been involved over 5,000 cases of legal in nature in the country. And to name few which all of us know also, like Madhumati Shukla case, that in the murder case, double murder case of Nithari serial killing case, Arush Emraj double murder case, and Ujjain serial killing case, Ranchi multiple murder. So ma'am has been involved in multiple murders very often, and she has been involved with the line coaching in Gujarat as well. So I think her credentials are very well established, and she's one of the reputed and loved forensic clinical psychologists in the country we have. So over to you, ma'am. Any technical issue, ma'am?
Dr. I, you might want to unmute yourself.
Mr. Bharat, need to help her?
Just a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, just give us a moment. We're just trying to figure this out. Just a moment. Yes, go ahead, Dr. Vaya.
Am I audible now?
I guess.
Yes, we can hear you, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Please go ahead.
Okay. I think I'll share my screen now. I think you are able to see it.
We are able.
You are able to see my screen?
Yes, ma'am. We are able to see.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you, Dr. Kalpana, for giving me this opportunity to address this professional group of IACP. And thank you, Bharat, for helping me to handle this technology. Let me start now. I'm a retired professional clinical and forensic psychologist who had an opportunity. One second. I'm unable to move my PPT, so I'm just trying to see.
Dr.
I'm
Vaya,
unable to move my PPT.
Could you try using the arrow keys?
Arrow.
Arrow on the top.
Yes. Now I think you can see the PPT clearly.
First one is off. First one is there.
Yeah. I'm a retired professional clinical and forensic psychologist who had an opportunity to explore the potential and challenging terrain of forensic psychology as a clinical psychologist. The aim of this presentation, especially to this IACP group, is to encourage professional clinical psychologists to enter this field by choice to offer forensic mental health services to deviants and victims with their core expertise. Clinical forensic psychologists are the well-equipped professionals to offer forensic mental health services to deviants and victims of crime alike to clinical population. So, if you are hoping for a better society, it is time to enter this field now. Now, before I go to present scenario of forensic psychology in India, it is necessary to understand the discipline of psychology and its application to the justice delivery system. So let me start with the legal maxim which says innocent until proven guilty. Then who will prove? Who knows well about the crime? Precisely, none of the stakeholders of justice delivery system would know about a crime well, neither the judge, nor the advocates, nor the police investigator, nor the forensic expert, nor the media. It is only the victim and the offender who know in and out of the event. Now, if I go back to take you back to little bit history of how the crime was investigated in the earlier days in India, probably all of you must have heard the story of Akbar and Birbal, where one fine morning, Minister Emperor Akbar's court gathered in the assembly hall and informed that previous night all his valuables were stolen by a thief. Akbar summoned Birbal to solve the mystery. Birbal got a donkey tied to the pole and ordered all the courtiers to lift the donkey's tail and say, "I have not stolen." Except for Alim Khan, all the courtiers had a black patch of paint on their palm. Birbal had actually got the donkey's tail painted with a black coat of paint, and the guilty minister did not touch the donkey's tail at all in fright. That is where the first understanding of psychology of mind body working together was there even during that time, where fear of detection was understood as a psychological component to expose the guilty. Now, with that principle only, if I go back to history, how this whole field came up in India, it was to begin with, it's a Central Forensic Science Laboratory, or what you call as CFSL CBI. We started lie detection division in the year 72 or 73 by appointing 3 psychologists. And according to their published research in the Polygraph Journal, interrogation and interviewing was an important integral part of the lie detection technique. The polygraph test can provide rewarding results to the investigating agencies. It can detect the guilt of the suspect and induce him to admit his guilt before the police. It can successfully reveal the innocence of a suspect as well as check the veracity of a complainant. Their published articles in CBI Bulletin also reflected the impact of their reports in Indian courts. As a consequence, other state forensic science laboratories took the initiative to establish lie detection units in their forensic science setups. Now, if you can look back to the kind of terminology they used, the instrument they used at that time, they called it as machines. So in fact, I have tried to use verbatim of what they have spoken in their published literature. The so-called machines which they used, they had 2 instruments in their CFSL lab. One is of killer polygraph, which had 4 channels to record respiration by pneumograph, cardiovascular changes by sphygmograph, and plethysmograph and electrodermal response by galvanograph. And they had another Lafayette model, and it had 2 channels to record respiration, one from thoracic region and the other from abdominal region. Cardiovascular changes and electrodermal responses were recorded by sphygmograph, and galvanograph respectively. See, the word they used was machine at that time, and you can see the Keeler polygraph available that was there at that point of time in 1974 at CFSL CBI, New Delhi. See, this was a mechanical instrument at that time, and probably lastly, when the time permits, we will come to that, how easy it was to handle technology from mechanical to electronic to all digital now. Now, it is after that, FSL Ahmedabad started the lie detection unit in 1982, and by 1984, they appointed 3 psychologists following the CFSL CBI pattern. But there were a lot of obstacles in the Ahmedabad appointments because there was already a legislative assembly question going on regarding the purchase of a lie detector in 78, which was neither in use nor in working condition. And the scientific officer had challenged the appointment of the assistant director by Gujarat Public Service Commission. So LAQ to answer in the assembly with a court case against the appointment, clinical psychologists got an opportunity to head the division without a polygraph instrument. See, and that is where probably when you are thrown into a situation where you are left with no choice but to use your own skills, that is where the skills of clinical psychology came handy tools for my work. And the skills acquired in mental health setup for about 8 years. Before I got into this department, I had already worked for about 8 years in mental health setup. And they were handy tools to start investigative, interventional, and rehabilitative work in a forensic setup. As a first step, from 1985 to 88, more than 150 crime cases comprising of complainants, suspects, witnesses, accused, and victims of crime were examined by integrating clinical interview to acquire investigative skills, resulting in forensic interview technique. And forensic psychological assessments was introduced in place of interrogation by adopting draw a person, vendor gestalt test, Gujarati adaptation of MMPI, which was my PhD topic as well, Murray's TAT, Jung's word association test, and sentence completion test. A brief lie scale was also developed that time to screen the suspects. In fact, this endeavor helped in integrating forensic interview technique and forensic psychological assessment in crime investigation. Now, simultaneously, a proposal to appoint visiting clinical psychologist to Sabarmati Central Prison was persuaded with Home Department, Government of Gujarat. A special order was issued by Additional Chief Secretary Home by name and appointed a visiting clinical psychologist to work in Sabarmati Central Prison for the assessment, intervention, and rehabilitation of mentally ill under trial prisoners and convicts. Soon, the challenging but the torrential potential for the growth of forensic psychology in forensic science setup was envisaged. Now, let me tell you something about forensic assessments and civil and criminal cases, because this is my dear IACP group, with whom I want to just attempt to get into this area. Now, integrating observation and clinical interview to objectively evaluate the human behavior in and mental status examination to assess attention, concentration, orientation, perception, memory, intelligence, insight, and judgment became a part of crime investigation. Forensic assessment interview was specifically designed to directly assess psycho-legal constructs. For assessing disability, cognitive deficits, and resulting personality changes, semi-structured cognitive and investigative interviews, enhanced neuropsychology battery, BG test, Wechsler memory scale, PGI memory scale, along with intelligence tests like Binet-Simon, Raman's progressive matrices, Bhatia battery, Reus were used. Forensic psychological assessment included forensically relevant instruments which were focused on clinical constructs pertinent to legal context, like forensic statement analysis, self-reporting inventories like Gujarati adaptation of the MMPI, projective techniques like draw a person, TAT, Rorschach, and word association. In fact, the recent addition was, recent means in the last 5 years I'm talking, forensic theme perception test based on Morgan interview theme technique to assess guilt, remorse, and violence and recidivism. Now, clinical assessment instruments refer to standardized psychological tests that are primarily designed to assess clinical constructs such as anxiety, depression, psychopathology, and anger. These instruments were used in assessment, diagnosis, and treatment planning in therapy, generally in clinical population, and same were used in the forensic setup. The question may come, why clinical assessment instruments were used in forensic cases? My simple answer to that was, why reinvent the wheel unless there is a specific need? The first advantage that I had at that time was, most of them tend to be psychometrically structured with an appropriate research space supporting its use in forensic assessment. For example, there is an extensive body of research supporting the forensic application of MMPI-2 and MCMI now. But earlier, even during that time, MMPI had a number of scales that were useful in assessing various response styles, including defensiveness, denial, display of positive attributes, malingering, irrelevant responses, and exaggerated or fake responding. Also, the clinical test could provide a broad understanding of multiple areas of functioning. Another value of using the standardized psychological tests in forensic assessment was the objectivity in evaluating the persons. The results were objective to provide valid information. Now the question comes is, what is forensic assessment in civil cases? Like when we talk of civil areas of practice, that includes the relationship between members of the community, and the goal is not to punish the wrongdoer, but to prevent or compensate for the wrong. So for example, in domestic law related to adults and children, including custody evaluations for family courts, assessment of children and adolescents, evaluation of civil competency, personal injury, eyewitness testimony, work-related compensation issues, disability evaluation, reconciliatory to loc adalats, and trauma caused by sexual harassment. In fact, I have just mentioned 3 examples, and if the time permits, lastly, I'll talk to you about those 3 cases. An 11-year-old lawyer's son was referred for assessment because he had a complaint of him being kidnapped. And a 16-year-old rape victim was referred by the court during the trial for finding out the perpetrator of the crime. And the third was, a couple was seeking divorce after 25 years of their marriage based on infidelity, but on a condition, only if lie detector test shows so, they want to go, otherwise they were ready to live together. Now, forensic assessment in criminal cases. When I say forensic assessment in criminal laws, when the criminal laws are broken, the goal is appropriately to punish the wrongdoer. So forensic assessment in criminal cases would include mental status examination, competency to stand the trial, criminal responsibility and insanity defense, diminished capacity, risk assessment, evaluation of eyewitness testimony, capital sentencing, mitigation, interviewing and interrogation for detection of deception. Here I can give you 4 or 5 examples where, if time permits, lastly I will talk about it. In fact, the moment I joined, on the very first week, a 64-year-old male, for confessing to have committed a rape on an 11-year-old girl, was brought at 4:30, saying that they have got 1 hour time to produce him before the court, and a pulse graph examination has to be done, and only I have to. They said there was nothing much, there is no difficulty in it. He has already confessed, you have to only confirm it. And that was the reason he was brought. And then a mother confessing to have thrown 2 of her children in the well, accused exercising his constitutional right to remain silent, who decided not to open the mouth. Then insurance claimant who was referred for lie detection because after the death of the wife, the insurance company found something fishy. Then witness of an accidental death who became a co-accused later after the investigations were over. Now, in this reference, it becomes necessary for psychologists to understand what is Section 84 of Indian Penal Code. The Indian law is codified in the Indian Penal Code 1860, and Section 84 is based on Manhattan rules. Act of a person of unsound mind, nothing is an offense which is done by a person who at the time of doing it, by reason of unsoundness of mind, is incapable of knowing the nature of the act, or that he is doing what is either wrong or contrary to the law. Now, with this, it also goes Actus Reus versus mens rea. That means the guilty act versus a guilty mind. The guilty act refers to the physical aspect of the crime, and guilty mind refers to the mental aspect, which is defined as an element of criminal responsibility, focusing on the state of mind of the accused. This refers to psychological or mental state of a criminal at the time when the crime was committed. Now, how do we establish mens rea? The essence of mens rea lies in examining the mind of the defendant, and when the defendant was thinking or intended at the time of the crime, if the accused was fully aware or had the knowledge of his or her wrongdoing, then mens rea is established. I can give an example here. One of the police personnel, while he was on duty in a police station, one fine day suddenly, out of blue, he had fired from his service revolver, for which he had no satisfactory explanation to his bosses, and they were forced to file a complaint, and he was brought for examination for evaluation. Then there are a lot of underworld accused, crime accused, getting themselves hospitalized with complaints of anxiety, depression, panic attacks, etc. And when do you get them for examination? These were the two questions that were bothering the investigating agencies at that point of time. Now, when I talk of forensic aspects of clinical psychology, what I learned from the last 4 slides which I spoke was to offer clinical evaluations of people involved in legal system as a party in civil matter or those facing criminal charges. Forensic psychologists need the skills of clinical psychology in legal matters. In civil cases, it may be in the form of diagnosis, investigative, therapeutic, or it may be rehabilitative. Whereas in criminal cases, it may be therapeutic to victims by forensic counseling, and investigative to detect deception, and correction or reformation of offenders to prevent reoffending. Now, with this clarity in my mind at that point of time, I sent a proposal for forensic psychology and amendments in Gujarat Police Manual. Meanwhile, a proposal was persuaded with Home Department, Government of Gujarat, to establish Forensic Psychology Division and to make necessary amendments in Gujarat Manual 1975. And on 1/10/1988, Home Department, Government of Gujarat issued an order to establish Forensic Psychology Division in Forensic Science Laboratory. But by then, we were also able to procure a new polygraph instrument, and you will be surprised to see this model, because when I showed you the earlier model, it was a mechanical model. In a decade time, it had moved to an electronic model. So this was the first fact finder, and from the earlier lie detector mechanical model to it had become an electronic model fact finder. Even the nomenclature had changed. Lie detector changed to fact finder. See, now when I talk of Gujarat Police Manual, subsequently Home Department passed a resolution, and under Gujarat Police Manual 1975 in rule number 170 within bracket 6, they introduced one more clause wherein they said in all important crimes wherein no direct evidence is available and it is suspected that witnesses, suspects are suppressing the truth, the investigating officer can avail the facility of scientific techniques of interrogation of such persons through lie detection, hypnosis, etc. See, this etc. is very important, because that time when I was called in the law department to discuss, I had asked them what all can come in this ETC. And that is the time they first made me understand, once you think that forensic psychology is a very broad domain, ETC covers everything. So you better have that ETC, and that is how it was incorporated. And now comes the legislative provisions and administrative authority. The legal provision in Gujarat Police Manual, the administrative authority in CRPC 1973 under section 293 and section 45 of Indian Evidence Act 1872 Empowered with independent authority as forensic psychologists by the government in 1988, there was no dearth of crime cases referred for investigation. In fact, I had published few articles on psychological assessments in CBI Bulletin, and lot of cases started, unsolved cases started coming from CBI from that time for psychological assessments. But there was very little research base to support the findings of the need-based empirical studies that were carried out whenever an investigation agency referred the case. So as an outcome, only need-based empirical studies were carried out whenever the requisition came, either from the investigating agency or from the jurisdictional courts. So we had two roles at that time. One was deception detection and practice of clinical forensic psychology. So as clinical psychologists continued the service, providing services to civil and criminal cases, working for reconciliation in family courts and local adalats, and also therapeutic intervention for victims till the workload increased in crime investigation. In fact, the most visible implication of introducing clinical interview and forensic psychological assessments with informed consent before the use of any detection of deception technique like forensic hypnosis, narcoanalysis, polygraph, LBA, SDS, BIOS or BFP, in fact, transformed the whole system of crime investigation. See, now here it becomes little important to understand what was happening at national level at that time. So when you look at the national scenario of lie detection units during that time, it was FSL Madhuban who started in Haryana by appointing a psychologist in 1983. Then Directorate of Forensic Science Services under BPR&D started lie detection units in CFSL Chandigarh, Hyderabad and Kolkata labs from 1996. They procured the instruments but they assigned the job to physics experts. Lie detection unit of CFSL Chandigarh was handled by a physicist from 1996 to 2005. State forensic science laboratories like Andhra Pradesh, Rajasthan also had lie detection division handled by either biologist or physicist. FSL Bhubaneswar, Orissa started in 1991 by appointing a psychologist, and now they have got 4 psychologists. FSR Kerala started lie detection unit by appointing a psychologist in 2007. FSL Jaipur recently in 2007 has appointed a psychologist, but not a full-time. He's more a consultant as and when the case is there. So why I presented the national scenario picture is that time detection of deception means the vision was limited to only detection of deception. So the general trend of forensic science laboratories was to make use of either a physicist, chemist or a biologist of the lab to handle polygraph instruments for lie detection work without appointing psychologists. Emphasis was more on lab setups and instruments than appointing qualified, experienced and skilled psychologists. As this was harmful to the growth of the field at national level, I took the initiative to get a provision made to include forensic psychology as a discipline in forensic science laboratory setup under NABL 101. And that is how Forensic Psychology Division of DFS Gandhinagar got a NABL accreditation in 2005. See, this is how the Forensic Psychology Division of DFS Gandhinagar was looking at 2004-5. This is a very old time picture I had in my PPT and I have showed it today. Now, when I talk of instrumentation and technology advancement, simultaneously, IT revolution and technology advancement helped in user-friendly, less cumbersome, portable instruments for detection of deception. Mechanical lie detectors changed to all electronic fact finders, but with manual scoring only. And now they have advanced it to computerized polygraph systems. With advancement in polygraph technology, even automated system based on combined analysis of psychophysiological indications for screening suspects, which is known as suspect detection system, layer-wise analysis were also added to lie detection. Brain electrical oscillation, signature profiling and brain fingerprinting are the two advancements in electrophysiology introduced for the detection of deception as neuropsychological method for crime investigation. Now, this is the latest computerized polygraph you can see, where you can see the change in 3 decades from mechanical to electronic to totally digitized systems. And now, when you look at the prevailing situation of forensic psychology division at national level, though FSL Ahmedabad pioneered forensic psychology in 1988 in Gujarat, this was followed by FSL Bangalore in 97, and the DFSL Mumbai in 2005 started with an MOU with the DFS Gandhinagar, and they established in 2005. FSL Madhuban Haryana has started from 2009. CFSL CBI renamed their division in 2011. CFSL Chennai, CFSL Mumbai also have renamed in 2011. FSL Lucknow and State Forensic Science Laboratory Delhi also have the divisions, but I didn't have the information, so I have not put the details. Now, when we look at the career graph of psychologists who had worked in forensic setup, the first psychologist whose first slide I had shown you, who has published some papers even in polygraph journals, Dr. Ganguly at CFSL CBI. He became Deputy Director of CFSL CBI, New Delhi. Unfortunately, he said demise took place during his tenure, so he could go further. Dr. Bibarani retired as Director CFSL CBI. She was also holding charge of Chief Forensic Scientist of Directorate of Forensic Science Services, MHA, New Delhi. Now at present, Dr. Asha Srivastava, Mr. J.J. Moses, Dr. A.K. Singh, they have got 3 principal scientific officers, and Dr. Asha Srivastava is heading Forensic Psychology Division of CFSL CBI, New Delhi. Now, Mr. Pradeep Saji is working as Joint Director in FSL Kerala. Dr. V.K. Gupta, who was appointed as Assistant Director in Madhuban, he moved to RA from there, and he worked in RA till his retirement. And today I would like to acknowledge in this group that he was the only person who trained me to handle a polygraph instrument. Then Mr. Surendra Singh from the same FSL Madhuban, who was an Assistant Director, he moved away as a member Haryana Public Service Commission. Now Mr. B.H. Patel from DFS Gandhinagar, he retired as Deputy Director, but when he had joined in 82 with me, he had joined as Scientific Assistant. Now, meanwhile, NIA has created a lot of job opportunities for forensic psychologists, and one of our students was appointed in Hyderabad NIA branch till last I met her in quite some time back. Now here, from here onwards, I think you have to be a little careful in listening to where the things have started little shaky. See, in 1986, CFSL CBI introduced the qualification of criminology also as an eligibility for lie detector unit. Though from 2011, the CFSL CBI moved on to forensic psychology, their recruitment rules seems to be still continuing with 1986 rules, the effect of which is seen now, wherein recently by conducting a written examination called F-PACT and personal interview, criminologists and forensic scientists are also recruited as forensic psychologists. They are equipped for crime scene management with no exposure or practical training to interrogate, interview, or conduct any psychological assessments of crime suspects. Either by qualification or by training, they are not equipped to handle civil and criminal cases of forensic psychology for assessment, investigation, intervention, and correction. But still, they have been appointed. This may hamper the future of forensic psychology domain. That I am not much worried, because anything that comes up has to one day go down. But they may themselves get into legal complications in future. Now, when I talk of present scenario of forensic psychology in India, recently, probably the Union Home Minister had announced that they were planning to upgrade 6 central forensic science laboratories to probe heinous crimes, and 6 central forensic laboratories in the country will soon be upgraded for carrying out efficient and scientific investigation in serious and heinous crimes. The Ministry of Home Affairs has decided to enhance the capacity of 6 CFSLs under Directorate of Forensic Sciences Services in the area of forensic psychology involving external experts. See, this is the most recent advancement in the expansion of forensic psychology beyond forensic laboratory setups. Now, when I talk of clinical forensic psychology, today I would call it as a super specialty, because other day I heard Mr. Sunny Joseph in TNACP's webinar on forensic psychology discussing the clinical aspects of forensic psychology. See, in fact, he had joined probably the Mumbai Forensic Lab in 2005, and when he joined, he was already he could perceive already the clinical forensic psychology existence in the air. He was not to make an effort from where to start. And that is where, when he spoke about the clinical forensic psychology, which he calls a basic understanding, was amazing. And that confirmed my conviction that clinical forensic psychology can only be a super specialty. The reason being, forensic scientists belonging to disciplines of physics, chemistry, biology, criminology, or for that matter, even forensic scientists, they may be jack of all but master of none. They are all well equipped to work in their own domains as experts, but definitely they are not the right choice to work in forensic psychology. Clinical psychologists, by their academic training, practical training, experience in mental health setup, are well equipped in terms of bio-psycho-socio-cultural aspects in understanding and dealing with human behavior resulting from disorders, disabilities to deviance. Thus, clinical forensic psychology can be considered as a super specialty for providing forensic mental health services to deviant population. Now, when I talk to you something about future prospects of this domain, my court experience in criminal trials as expert witness, as well as investigative experience of accused who had or during process of investigation had confessed to the crimes, thought that perpetrators of crime had soft corner for their victims because of their experience of witnessing helplessness of the victim when the event occurred. This can be clearly seen in their expressions when they come for interrogations. We have lots of support and help of people who can maneuver the system to save us, but dead victims have no voice. They are also well aware how survivors are victimized secondarily, resulting in victims being in more pain than themselves. That is how they are able to empathize with the victim, but silently. Cases wherein accused had confessed during investigation in labs, and when I met them or saw them during trials, when I deposed as expert witness against them, gave a clear understanding of their mental status. I could see their compassion and respect for the expert in acknowledging that expert has done a right job and a good job. This communication, both verbal and non-verbal, gave an understanding of the psychological trauma faced by them in facing the victim and their coping skills, wherein in every attempt of them resulting in secondary victimization, and that had damaged their self-images. This is where they need forensic counseling and therapy for their own healing and prevent their own attempt to save themselves, resulting in secondary victimization, irrespective of the judgment outcome. Many times, though the world may feel justice is done, victim may not feel satisfied in the justice that is delivered, which only an accused would acknowledge. That is where, in judicial processing, is such wherein victim and accused come face to face with each other, and this is the best opportunity to introduce therapeutic jurisprudence and restorative justice to create a healthy society. This also gave an understanding that the therapy starts from the moment they are clinically interviewed by the psychologist for crime investigation. In the process of their psychological assessments with forensic counseling, they find a comfortable, non-judgmental place to open up and talk. by the time their investigation is completed and results are communicated, they are well aware that advanced technologies have helped in identifying their deceptions and fixing the missing links in the form of physical correlates of the experiments. Now that is how clinical forensic psychology for forensic mental health services. It is from here onwards they need to be handled and addressed the way clinical psychologists would address their clients. This mixture of clinical forensic handling is the best way to address psychological trauma resulting because of courtroom procedure. All this needs services of a clinical forensic psychologist to deal with both victim and the offender till court judgments are delivered. This is possible only with forensic mental health service divisions established like clinical psychology services in medical setup or forensic psychology divisions in forensic setup as an independent domain services provided to quote-unquote victim accused forum for handling their psychological trauma resulting because of courtroom procedure. This would help in preventing secondary victimization of the survivor and reoffending of the perpetrator. A very challenging but is very sensitive territory to address and assist justice delivery system, of course with the monitoring system in place to see the complete process. Who else could be a better professional to bridge this gap than a clinical forensic psychologist? According to me, clinical forensic psychology can take this up as a forensic mental health service, which can be introduced by taking into confidence all the stakeholders of criminal justice delivery system, including clinical and forensic psychologists and policymakers, to come up with a roadmap for preventing reoffending and rehabilitating the psychological trauma victims and accused undergo actively till the judgment is delivered and passively all their lives. Both groups need forensic mental services for their well-being till they are alive. Now, when I talk of suggestions and recommendations for the next generation to take up, it is courtroom psychology, therapeutic jurisprudence, and restorative justice, and neurocriminology. The untouched, challenging terrains of clinical forensic psychology. I wish and I hope this forum would contemplate and today's presentation to take it forward from here. Thank you all, and I am grateful to my following professional colleagues, Dr. Asha Srivastav, Mr. Sunny Joseph, and Mr. Nilesh Wagh for sharing information, references, and slides for this presentation of mine today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vaya. That was a really interesting presentation. I think I speak for all of our members when I say that this was a very unique presentation for all of us, for me at least, and for the audience as well, and done so elegantly. So, ma'am, I want to really thank you for speaking here. And I would also like to call upon Dr. Kalpana to give a final vote of thanks from her end as well. Dr. Kalpana?
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am, for such a wonderful session. You have covered every aspect of it. So you covered the very fine nuances. And I can see the financial, what you have talked about and touched upon is the secondary victimization is a very important aspect. And I would say a lot of scope for the forensic clinical psychologists in the mental health delivery system, especially in this domain. Apart from the investigation assessment, the forensic clinical psychologists can work in the domain of mental health delivery system in preventing this secondary trauma. Very well said, very well deliberated. I think, Mr. Bharat, there should be a few questions taken up by Dr. Vaya if the time permits, because
yes, ma'am.
There must be a few questions, and the audience can probably share their questions. Ma'am,
yes, ma'am. So, yes. So, ladies and gentlemen, please ask any questions that you might have in the question section. I can already see that there are a few questions here. Dr. Vaya, we have a lot of questions from students actually. where they are interested in knowing how they can get into the field of forensic psychology. I guess you have truly inspired a lot of people to get into that field today. Or I think, would you like to address that quickly before we move on to the more subject matter questions?
See, in fact, there are a lot of institutions which have come up with forensic psychology programs, specifically master's program, and even at I think Institute of Forensic Science Pune has come up with masters in forensic psychology. Raksha Shakti University has come up with masters in forensic psychology. Even IBS GFSU, our Institute of Behavioral Science, Gujarat Forensic Science University has come up. I think Jain University must be having. So quite a few new institutions have come up these days, and lot of private institutions are looking for starting this whole domain. But what I say is, it is not starting some new course without planning a roadmap that what are you going to take them and where are they going to land. See, whoever plans to take up or start this course, they have to be very cautious, very careful, and they should be very clear, because it is a very, very tricky terrain to walk through. In fact, to tell you honestly, I had my 5 years experience in exclusive mental hospital setup, and I had about 3 years experience in medical colleges, handling varieties of cases before I landed in forensic. Even then, after that, about 5 years, I continued working in Sabarmati Central Prison. So I still feel that even the people who have come up newly without having even PhD, masters in within bracket clinical psychology with net and slate, have already started forensic psychology courses in the universities. So just because it is an interesting field, be sure where you are getting into before you choose or decide to choose such programs. That is all I can say.
So we have some questions related to the topic as well. So the first question is, this is a question from Shweta Tendon. How easy or difficult is it to form a therapeutic relationship with criminals who have committed heinous crimes such as gang rape? And second question is how to handle such counter transferences. So if I were to just repeat that, how easy or difficult is it to form a therapeutic relationship with criminals who have committed heinous crimes, and how to handle counter transference?
Yeah. See, if somebody has worked in clinical domain, probably it will be as easy as working with a clinical patient, right? So the question of how easy or difficult comes only when you look at the person with your own prejudices and biases, which you don't do in clinical setup. So even in clinical setup, a person may come up with those kind of delusions or fantasies or something like those things, wherein we know they are not realities, and we will have that compassion to accept those things as a part of his thought process. Whereas in real cases, when they do something and come to see you, we are not here to judge them. We are here only there to give our 2 years to them to see that if we can listen to them. That's it. That is all the attitude that is required. And the second question is counter transference. See, I think the moment you sit across the table is a permanent communication to say that there can neither be a transference nor a counter transference from your side to any occasion with anyone. Forget about clients, forget about deviants, forget about anyone. The moment you make somebody sit across the table, this is the first lesson that has to be taught in everyone in their clinical or forensic training. The moment you are across the table, you should know the limits. So there is no question of any transference and counter transference that occur. I hope I have answered the question.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. The next question we have is from Sakshi. Sakshi asks, what is the role of intellectual disability with crime committed?
Intellectual disability, see, I have come across a lot of them, and I have also been appearing for them in courts, both in juveniles as well as in adults. See, sometimes like for example, I can give you a few examples, like periphery victims of riots cases, wherein most of them who are involved are either people with intellectual disabilities or the chronic residual symptoms, major mental disorder cases, right? So you have to be very cautious in addressing the clinical aspect of the forensic complication or forensic consequence, as well as you should be aware of forensic consequence of a clinical condition. That is where I said, other than clinical or forensic psychologist, no other professional person will be able to handle this field.
Mr. Bharat, Dr. Manoj has come. He is not able to hear anything.
Dr. Manoj, would you mind connecting your audio as well? Because I can see that your audio is not connected.
Meanwhile, can you take the question, ma'am?
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
More questions.
So I'll just move on to the next question. So yeah, we have a question from I guess Shraddha Visa. So she asks, does law of insanity apply in case of an offender who has antisocial personality disorder or conduct disorder?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Does law of insanity apply in a case where the offender has an law of insanity? Insanity, ma'am. If it applies, if it applies to an offender who has antisocial personality disorder or conduct disorder.
See, in fact, that's what they are the maximum type of cases that would come for evaluation. And that is where probably when you have to evaluate without doing a clinical psychological assessment, you cannot interpret the forensic consequence of it. Likewise, without looking the forensic aspects of it, say for example, after I had 4 or 5 such cases, like one person had sodomized a boy on the way in a village, wherein after probably 15-20 days, people came to know that he has done this. And by the time he was brought for the examination, he had met with an accident wherein he had a head injury and he was hospitalized for a long time. And when he recovered and came, he said, I don't remember anything. And another incident I can tell you is that most of the people with antisocial personality background are personality disorders who are there involved in different kinds of crime. Either in one part of their life or other part of their life, either they have broken somebody's head or their heads have got broken by someone. So invariably they claim these kind of benefits, or they try to claim these kind of benefits, but continue to work in the organized crime links. And it is those are the issues which are collateral that needs to be considered before making any opinion. Say for example, we had a case of under Official Secret Act, where almost for about 50-55 days he was in the custody for interrogation, and ultimately when that was the first case where probably we did narco analysis in Sabarmati Central Prison itself as early as 89. And when we saw that he was a hypomanic person, other than the symptoms of elated mood and increased psychomotor activity and thought process, there was nothing actively he had done. See, but in spite of all that, he was to stay in the jail for more than a year till he was released under Section 164. So all these things have to be seen with collateral informations of crimes and associated consequences.
Great, ma'am. We also have a few questions from a lot of clinical psychologists, and they're again they're actually interested in I guess switching careers and going to forensic psychology. So they're asking what could be the pathway for them, because I'm seeing at least like 10 to 15 questions that are.
Probably, I think I can share my slides with them. The last 2 slides wherein I have spoken about clinical forensic psychology domain and where they should go ahead. Such as clinical psychologists, mental health care bill has authorized them with so many independent authorities, including RCI, to do many things. Now, what they require is only a government resolution for them to work if they're interested really to do that. They can straight away start a clinical forensic OPD jointly wherever they are working. They can start a OPD. They can contact the departments, health departments, to issue an order. I mean, this is what I did when I started. I was working in a forensic setup. I approached the home department, said issue an order because I am free in the other time because I don't have an instrument to work. I can work in other cases. My knowledge should not go waste. And the special order was issued to work in jail. So that way, you have to be proactively approaching the administrative authorities because they are not aware, not that they don't want to issue anything. See, one thing I have seen, at least judiciary, I can openly vouch, they are very, very cooperative the moment you want to offer any kind of service related to mental health services to either the victims or the offenders. They are proactive in giving all support. It is time for our people to proactively approach them. But if they think somebody will create everything, advertise, they'll just walk in for the interview, come back and sit on the chair, and then they say this is defined and this is what I want to do. That is not the way it works, because they don't know what knowledge you have and what you can deliver. And unless you proactively go and do those proposals, things don't move.
We have a question from Dr. Jyoti Mani. She asks how to handle the juvenile delinquency who don't feel guilty for their acts at all.
See, first of all, we can't conclude they don't feel guilty. It takes ages to say that somebody don't feel guilty, because they may be having better coping skills not to show it that they are feeling guilty. But the moment if there is any physical symptom occurring on their body because of those mental thoughts, that surely is an indication of guilt that is existing in them. So what we need to do is, there is a neurocriminology module which helps them to make them understand their thoughts, their emotions, their feelings, and then convert that antisocial behavior into a pro-social behavior. So unless they go to a deeper level, they can't, I mean, just because your tests don't indicate, you can't say somebody is not feeling guilty. See, even if they are feeling guilty, they don't have to come and express before anybody that they are feeling guilty.
Mr. Bharat, why Manoj is not able to hear you, listen anything, can you help him in this? Meanwhile, I have a question for Dr. Vaya, ma'am.
Yeah.
Bharat, ma'am,
Sure.
wanted to ask you a very pertinent question that you have talked about the, for example, secondary victimization. Do we have an option of having a forensic clinical psychology in a mental health care delivery system during the process of trial, after trial? Does that happen? This option exist?
Yeah, it does. It does because, see, because the courts would refer the cases to you. If they know that you can do this kind of work, the courts themselves would refer the cases.
But have you seen the cases being referred to forensic clinical psychologists?
Yeah. In fact, last time when I addressed juvenile delinquency specifically in the TNACP group, I have also shared the court judgment. I have also shared the court order. I have also shared the details of examination, reporting, everything. So for everything today of what I have talked, there is a case available on record to say that there is a precedence.
I mean to say, have they employed people in the legal cell where they refer the clinical psychologist?
The question of employment does not come here for the cases that they get once in a year or once in 2 years. For that, if you are providing that service, you should be accessible to them, so that if you are able to get at least 10 cases in a year, then they can ask you, okay, apply somebody. If you don't get even one case, I don't think they have to create a vacancy.
So, I mean, this is for all the practitioners. They really want to. This should be known to all the practitioners who are interested in the field, that they can approach the system, especially for providing these kind of services.
Yeah, they should.
Any other questions, ma'am? We have 1 or 2 questions more we can take.
Yes. Ma'am, I would like to put across one last question for you before we end. There are a lot of questions on book suggestions. So people want to know any book suggestions that they can get from you. It could be in the field of forensic psychology, or just any book that you like.
I think effective Effective interview and interrogation by Gardner is an ideal Bible for people who wants to newly enter forensic field.
Great, ma'am. So I've just heard that Dr. Manoj will not be able to join. He's facing some technical issues. So I guess I'll be ending it there. Unless Dr. Kalpana, do you have anything to add?
I would like to thank all the ma'am firstly for giving this time and the valuable input to all of us. It was really a wonderful session, very educative for all of us. And the audience, we cannot see them. I can see the attendance of approximately 500 full capacity. So thank you everyone for being here. And thank you, ma'am, for sharing this platform with us and your wisdom with us. And thank you, Mr. Bharat.
Thank you so much, madam. Thank you, Bharat, and thank you, IACP.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
for
Thank
those
you,
who
ma'am.
For giving me an
yes, this is for those who are attending the session, that in the series of IACP, we'll be conducting these webinars of distinguished professionals in our country for the benefit of everybody. Thank you, everyone. Yes.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Vaya. Thank you, Dr. Kalpana. This brings us to the end of the session. It was a truly insightful session, and I want to thank all of our viewers for the strong interest in the webinar. I look forward to meeting you all in the next Pearson Learning webinar. Like Dr. Kalpana mentioned, we will be doing a series of them. Please check your emails for upcoming webinars. With that, we end this session. I hope you've enjoyed this webinar as much as we've enjoyed delivering it to you. Once again, thank you so much for sparing your time and have a great day.